Good afternoon, Transportation Research Board presenters and fellow Dwight D. Eisenhower scholars. My name is Erica Thompson, an honors senior civil engineering student attending North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Today, I will be presenting my initial research on the environmental impacts of transportation. In this research, I plan to analyze the history of transportation and the time frame between innovative transportation leaps, such as moving from horses to semi-autonomous vehicles or fully autonomous vehicles to electric vehicles, and understanding the concepts required to make those changes. I will also be researching the environmental impact of each of these transportation leaps. For example, traffic runoff and transportation runoff's impact on wildlife, effectively cutting down forestation to create highways, interstates, and back roads. If you do not understand history, then you are doomed to repeat it. I want to understand what was successful and what was unsuccessful about the transportation industry of the past to better understand how to positively impact the future. I believe that this research will adjust the way the transportation industry looks at their product and their impact. It is easy to ignore problems that do not present themselves directly, but nevertheless, it is important that these issues be addressed and corrected if possible. I believe that my research, if yielding negative results, will call the transportation industry to adjust how they operate. In order to properly analyze the developments in transportation, I reviewed my parameters and concluded to separate them based on their general areas of operation: land, water, and sky. Regarding land transportation, there are 7 initial leaps in transportation that I began to research, finding the causes for such innovations and the efficiency of travel after the fact. The same for water, where I chose 5 innovations, and sky, where I chose 7. After the data is collected, the timeline can be combined to analyze how efficiently man moved through one type of transportation versus another. On to my data and analysis. Regarding land transportation, I have found the transition from walking to other forms of land transportation allowed for people to increase the amount of items they were able to transport, as well as the quickness and efficiency of travel. Earlier methods, such as carts and wagons and animal-powered transportation, created minor environmental impact. Trails were typically created to ensure that vegetation went undisturbed during travel. Steam engines had major negative environmental impact due to the pollution created by the carbon dioxide that is emitted into the atmosphere, which proved alarming despite the level of efficiency it provided for transportation purposes. Motor vehicles were relatively worse for the environment because they allowed hundreds of thousands of people to be spreading carbon dioxide emission simultaneously. Steam engine trains, by comparison, are only marginally better due to the ride-sharing component of them. Transition from swimming to other water transportation allowed for increased water travel, given the convenience of a water alternative compared to taking longer land-based routes. Early boats and hydrofoil boats had minor environmental impact. They required wood and reusable materials, have low impact with the water, and therefore should not disturb the ecosystems within the water too negatively. Submarines, however, are submerged in the water and therefore will grossly disrupt the underwater ecosystem, which with not only its movement, but with the way the water will impact the currents. Steamboats, again, release terrible pollution into the atmosphere. The earliest sky transportation was the hot air balloon, which does burn fossil fuels, but propane is a relatively cleaner fuel than the others. Later sky transportation methods tend to burn heavy amounts of carbon dioxide, which negatively impacts the environment. Heliport facilities in general generate both negative and positive environmental concerns. The positives stem from things like ease of access regarding location and job opportunity, but the negatives can range from things like poor soil and water quality in the surrounding areas, noise pollution, and poor air quality. Rocket fuel, while continuously improving, is still suffering from fuel errors made in the past. Chemical additives placed in the fuel still exist in the areas of previous launch sites, making those areas toxic and a risk to human health. While those issues are slightly resolving, unfortunately, they have only improved to make the fuel as environmentally dangerous as that of a plane or a helicopter. I still have some fundamental research to do concluding this presentation, but after that I will begin my work regarding transportation runoff. More specifically, how do these modes of transportation affect the surrounding ecosystems? With every mode of transportation, there is fuel emission and runoff. I will be researching the percentage of the fuel that ends up in reservoirs, rivers, lakes, and so on. I will analyze over what time frame did the fuel amounts end up in these ecosystems and how much fuel can be added into these streams before the wildlife is effectively put in danger. After concluding a quantitative analysis on the fuel amounts, I will investigate the average amount of fuel leakage that transportation vehicles produce. I will also investigate the average degree of incline of roadways and runways to see how that factors into the rate of leakage. It was suggested by my advisor that I research the chemicals found in the fuel and how that would also affect the wildlife. How will the chemicals impact wildlife in regard to how long they will live, their organs, reproduction, genetic mutations, etc. Additionally, how will the fuel affect their habitat and the impact on the fuel runoff on the ecosystem/food chain? The chemical MTBE, methyl tertiary butyl ether, was removed from fuel as noted on the EPA website because it may have had something to do with leaking into drinking water and affecting the Clean Air Act. I will be researching if perhaps MTBE had an impact on wildlife and also if the new additives are safer or just as dangerous as MTBE. And the next month, concluding my runoff and emission research, I will be focusing on the ozone layer devastation reduction, the impact transportation overall has had on the ozone layer and its rate of decay. I will also be researching how the rate has increased, decreased, or remained stagnant since the uptick in ride sharing and electric vehicles. My final research will consist of researching transportation shifts since the start of COVID-19 and any other environmental factors, focusing primarily on how emission, runoff, and ozone devastation has been impacted since the unofficial start of quarantining around the beginning of April 2020. By this time, most colleges had dismissed all students and all non-essential workers were working from home. While researching these topics above, other factors pertaining to my research may present themselves, and I will be sure to document them accordingly. I would like to thank the Transportation Research Board and the Dwight D. Eisenhower Fellowship Program for allowing me to have the opportunity to pursue this research. I would also like to thank Teresa McCray, my Dwight D. Eisenhower Fellowship Program point of contact at North Carolina A&T, as well as Professor Tamika D. Coley for being my faculty mentor for the duration of this research assignment. Thank you.